Hey everybody, Trey here. Welcome back to another forecast discussion. We have an enhanced risk here across parts of the upper Midwest into the Great Lakes region. Basically southeast Minnesota, northern Iowa, through the southern half of Wisconsin, down over toward just north of the Chicago area into Michigan there. With the surrounding slight risk, we have a couple of different areas of severe weather today. We have this first area within the enhanced risk that is associated with this 5% tornado risk. There is a 2% tornado risk downstream as well for another complex that is ongoing this morning. We'll talk about that in a second. Damaging wind is going to be a threat as well, 30% hatched area for significant severe wind gusts associated with that enhanced risk area, as well as an area for large hail there as well, perhaps significant hail with the storms across the western portion of the risk area. So let's go ahead and get started here. We'll take a look at what's going on right now, and this is our current radar at the moment. You can see we have two different complexes ongoing here, one across southern Minnesota heading in the general direction of the Rochester area, and then one out here across Illinois into Indiana and Ohio. This first band is going to be associated with damaging winds this morning, perhaps some redevelopment here along the backside of that as well as that moves into Indiana and Ohio. Again, you saw that 2% tornado risk with a damaging wind and a large hail risk as well. I think given that we're already seeing some clustering of these westernmost storms here within this secondary band of storms, we will see mostly a damaging wind threat with the threat for maybe a couple embedded tornadoes or so. But this first band, damaging winds, going to be the main threat as well. And then back here is going to be the more potent, perhaps a more potent severe threat that will be ongoing this morning and pick up a little bit this afternoon as it moves into southeast Minnesota and Wisconsin. Let's go and take a look at the water vapor satellite imagery as we always do here. You can see where those two complexes are here based on the upper level water vapor here. Interesting features to note here. We have a big ridge of high pressure centered basically across the Four Corners region. Basically, you could call that our monsoon high, if you will. That is going to produce some perhaps severe weather across Arizona this afternoon into the next few days as we have the monsoon ramping up once again. We have this little perturbation here that's going to be our main player for the severe weather threat today. It's actually more of a big sort of broad trough here across the northern portion of the U.S. into Canada, kind of riding the top of that ridge. Several perturbations within that sort of larger scale westerly or zonal flow there. And that's going to be our main player today as we go into the afternoon. We'll take a look at our mesoanalysis here. This is at 500 millibars, so about 18,000 feet. You can see where that high pressure is. Very well-defined ridge of high pressure here centered across basically the Four Corners region, northwest New Mexico there. And you can see this big old long wave trough here across the very northern portion of the country into Canada with several different little kinks in the flow here, as I like to say, rounding the base of that trough, kind of within the larger scale zonal flow. We have this first one here that is the culprit for that leading band of storms across Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio this morning. Then we have the main sort of belt of flow draped here across the Dakotas into Minnesota. Pretty much perfectly zonal flow out here. A little bit of a kink there in the height contours here. So a little perturbation here across the northern part of the country. That is going to be our main player for this secondary band of storms across Minnesota right now, moving into southeast Minnesota and Wisconsin throughout the day. Surface map is interesting as well. We have a surface low here centered across basically the South Dakota-Nebraska border with a cold front draped to the south of that across the central high plains there, and a warm front there emanating kind of a little bit muddled here, but it is somewhere in there. You can definitely see it's somewhere in there, maybe a little bit more like this. So these storms are just maybe to the north of this warm front right now across southern Minnesota, but they may catch up with it as well, or they may push it to the south and remain a little bit to the north of that warm front throughout the day. I would expect that they might try to catch up to this warm front throughout the day. As it becomes a little bit more diffuse, it won't matter as much if the storms are north of this boundary. they will become surface base as we go into this afternoon. Let's go ahead and look at the low-level jet here, 850 millibars, so about a kilometer off the surface. You can see we have a little bit of low-level jet here across the Central Plains down into Oklahoma there, northwest Oklahoma, 35 knots here across northeast Nebraska into southeast South Dakota. A little bit to the south, a little bit removed from our main complex of storms here, and that's actually going to decrease as we go throughout the day today. You can see that the low-level jet is not really a huge player in the overall profile today. We're not going to have super strong cyclogenesis here. We don't really have a strong trough here traversing the Rockies. We just have kind of this belt of strong zonal flow here, kind of across the central, the Dakotas into Minnesota right now. So we're not really going to have strong surface cyclogenesis here, lee cyclogenesis here today to help provide that mass response and allow that low-level jet to strengthen throughout the day. But we're not going to need it to help moisten the atmosphere. Let me go ahead and take a look. Let's go ahead and take a look here at the dew point map. You can see we have a very moist air mass here. These yellows are 72 plus dew points here. So you can see we have dew points up into the 70s, well up into southern Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, and down to the south here. So a plume of very high low-level moisture here to work with. Let's go ahead and look at the surface map. Forgot to pull that up ahead of time. Haven't done one of these in a while, so a little bit rusty. But let's go ahead and pull this up. Let's take a look at our surface map here, and you can see just how high the dew points are throughout the region. So we have nice southwesterly to southerly flow here, leading up into kind of this warm frontal zone. You can see the wind shift here. Southerly flow to southeasterly flow here across Iowa into southern Minnesota with northerly flow here. So the warm front is draped somewhere in here, it looks like, roughly with our surface low back in here across the Nebraska-South Dakota border region. Take a look at the dew points here. 74, 79 here, that may be a little bit of an erroneous reading there, but you can see low to mid 70s dew points all the way up into southern Minnesota there, into Wisconsin. So very high surface moisture here to work with today. All right, let's go back and take a look at some soundings here. This is the 12Z sounding, so 7 a.m. Central Daylight Time here. This is the Minneapolis-St. Paul sounding. Interestingly enough, a very shallow moist layer that we're working with there. This may have been well north of the front at this time this morning, as it still is right now, but 66 over 64, but a very shallow moist layer. You can see a very strong inversion here just above the surface associated with some really dry, warm air aloft. So that may keep things elevated in the meantime until these storms kind of catch up to that warm frontal zone, get into the warm sector fully this afternoon. So storms may remain elevated. There's plenty of instability aloft here to continue these storms into the morning. You can see, let's go down to the Quad Cities area. This is Davenport. You can see very high instability at this point this morning, 2,300 joules per kilogram of CAPE. This one closer to the warm sector here. You can see a little bit shallow of a moist layer as well here. So a nice inversion here across the region here just above the surface. A little bit more moist air though just above the surface, but there is kind of a warm layer right above the surface here across the region. So that may keep storms elevated for a little while until we get some surface heating today. We'll take a look at the satellite here real quick, see if that's going to be an issue. Let's go ahead and zoom in. Take a look at the zoomed in sector here. So you can see ahead of this complex, there is a little bit of anvil shading, a little bit of cirrus out ahead of this complex from the anvils kind of blowing off out ahead of this convection. But overall, mainly clear skies here across Iowa into southern Wisconsin, northern Illinois. So there should be plenty of instability that is allowed to build up here and that these storms will feed off of as they move into the enhanced risk region, the main portion of the enhanced risk region, early this afternoon into this evening. So would expect that inversion will decrease some. We also will have that trough aloft, that little bit of zonal flow aloft, pretty strong zonal flow aloft to help lift and cool that capping inversion there in the low levels. But it's going to take a little bit of work. You can see mixed layer SIN approaching about negative 150 joules per kilogram there across here at Davenport. Minneapolis going to be a lot stronger. I would suspect, yeah, you can see 400, minus 400 joules per kilogram there at Minneapolis. So there is some sin to overcome, but I think we will get some surface heating, and that trough will help lift and cool that inversion later on this afternoon. Let's take a look here. We can kind of take a look at storm mode here real quick. I'm going to focus on this trailing complex here. That's going to be our main severe threat for this afternoon. You can see it's already clustered into a pretty messy storm mode. And that's what tends to happen with these westerly or northwesterly flow type events. And I won't get into the science of why here, but the northwesterly flow events really tend to cluster up and tend to become an MCS pretty quickly here. Just because of the way the winds are oriented aloft, how the storms interact with each other. Just like along a cold front where the forcing is strong, you tend to get a more linear storm mode. Kind of the same thing with northwest flow events. But we will see perhaps some redevelopment of this stuff out here in northeast Nebraska, southeast South Dakota. This is going to be closer to the warm front. This stuff may try to catch up to that warm front, as I said, by early this afternoon. This stuff may remain elevated this morning as it moves into southeast Minnesota, into Wisconsin, and perhaps become surface-based later as we can get a little bit more advection of that moisture up into southern Wisconsin, southeast Minnesota. And we get, again, some redevelopment here out to the west with this kind of second band of storms here just east of the surface low that will be surface-based. Tornado is going to be a threat today. I do think all hazards are on the table, especially hail is going to be a threat early on in the convective life cycle. We'll take a look here at our models here. This is the morning NAM run. You can see that belt of flow here across the northern portion of the country. That moves off to the east a little bit and strengthens just a tad throughout the day. That may be a little bit convectively enhanced there. But we maintain generally zonal flow across the region throughout the morning. Low-level jet, you can see, doesn't strengthen much at all until after dark here, at which point we may see a little bit of an enhancement of the low-level hodographs there across the region. Surface map here, you can see that we start off with that surface low across the Nebraska-South Dakota border. Kind of sags here as that cold front pushes south across the region. And we kind of maintain that warm frontal zone across southern Minnesota into Wisconsin there. That will be kind of our main zone for the most enhanced tornado threat. As we know, low-level shear is often enhanced there along that warm frontal zone. You can see the moisture where it pools right along that frontal zone there across southern Minnesota into Wisconsin. That warm front going to be draped right in here somewhere, maybe right in there somewhere. It's kind of a little bit muddled, and we're just looking at the moisture map, but definitely in here to some extent. So any storm that is able to ride along that front will have an enhanced tornado threat. Let's take a look at some soundings here. We'll take a look here. This is going to be at 18Z. We'll take a look ahead of this ongoing convection here, right at the kind of Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin triple point there. We'll take a look at a quick sounding here. This is going to be at 18Z, so we'll be at 1 p.m. Central Daylight Time, and you can see that low-level inhibition hangs on quite a bit. So those storms in Minnesota right now are likely to remain pretty elevated, I would suspect, throughout the morning. We're going to have to rely on this redevelopment here back to the south, the west and southwest of the ongoing convection to become surface-based later on. If these move into Wisconsin later on this evening, they may have a chance of becoming surface-based. But this stuff back here into southeast South Dakota, northeast Nebraska may be our main player for a surface-based severe threat later this afternoon. We'll go on a little bit farther. This is going to be at 21Z. We'll go kind of the same spot here out ahead of the redeveloping convection there. You can see we do have quite a bit of instability to work with. The NAM forecasting, this is 5,500 joules per kilogram of mixed layer CAPE, just a ton of instability today. And that's thanks to that very high low-level moisture, surface heating, temperatures going up into the 90s there with dew points approaching 80 degrees Fahrenheit, which is a typical summer thing for the upper Midwest into the Great Lakes region. You can see that inhibition has eroded fully by 21Z, which would be 4 p.m. Central Daylight Time, so very high instability. Not much low-level shear to work with at this point, but there is enough deep layer shear for supercells, at least in the initial phase of convective development, before they start to line out into a more MCS type appearance. We'll go to 0Z here out ahead. We'll take a sounding out here ahead as well and kind of see what's going on later this afternoon into the early evening hours. And you can see we do have that little bit of contamination here from convection. It doesn't look like it's affected the sounding too much here. Still large instability hanging around, over 5,000 joules per kilogram of mixed layer CAPE there. So very strong instability, very strong low-level instability as well. Deep moist layer makes an appearance here, unlike what we're seeing with the morning sounding. So that we do have some semblance of low-level moist advection and erosion of that cap from surface heating. That trough helping out a little bit to lift and cool that capping inversion here near the surface. And we do have a little bit more curvature here as that low-level jet starts to ramp up just before and right near sunset here. So we do have a little bit of a threat for a few tornadoes here, given the high instability. Should be some embedded circulations today, especially near that warm frontal zone. Deep layer shear favorable again for supercells in the first hour or two of convective development, and then after that they should move off, develop into a more of a clustered or linear mode later this afternoon into the evening. So let's take a look here at some models here, some convective allowing models, just to put the cherry on top here. So this is the 14Z HER. You can see it doesn't really have a great handle on what's going on this morning. This would be right about now. You can see it does not have those storms nearly as strong as they should be across Minnesota. So that may throw a wrench into things here for this particular model run of the HRRR. But we'll take a look at what it does here later this afternoon. It tends to strengthen these storms. You can see that this is kind of way behind schedule. If we look at our radar, storms are already here ongoing right now in southern Minnesota with some severe warnings as well. And the HER is showing that doesn't happen until about 1 o'clock. So the HER is way behind schedule here. So we're probably going to have to throw this run out. But general overall progression, we do get some embedded supercells here, it looks like, within this broader sort of complex. And then it quickly transitions into a squall line here as it moves into southeast Minnesota and Wisconsin this afternoon. Let's go ahead and look at the ARW model here. See if this has a little bit better handle on things. So this is at 16Z. This would be right about now. Much better handle on things. This morning you can see it does have some stronger storms here across southern Minnesota with that kind of back building stuff out in southeast South Dakota, northeast Nebraska. So this has a little bit better handle on things. Much more apt to believe this model. So you can see this early stuff is going to be the main show according to this model run, and you can see it kind of maintains that sort of messy characteristics as it moves on throughout the afternoon, as it moves into southeast Minnesota and Wisconsin. Some development here along the back edge of this stuff, maybe all the way back into Nebraska as well. We'll have to watch that for a little bit more of a discrete mode closer to the warm frontal zone, but you can see the mode is just pretty messy here with this entire event. And lastly, we'll take a look at the NSSL WRF. Has a good handle on things as well, and you can see that stuff moves off into southeast Minnesota, into Wisconsin, and just maintains that sort of linear clustered mode throughout its duration with some more development back here as well. So this looks like a little bit of agreement between the ARW and the NSSL WRF of some redevelopment back here, northern Iowa, southern Minnesota this afternoon, with the main band moving into Wisconsin as we go into the afternoon and early evening hours. So that's going to be it for this morning's discussion. Again, enhanced risk here across southern Minnesota, northern Iowa, into southern Wisconsin, toward kind of the Milwaukee areas into western Michigan. All severe hazards on the table. 5% tornado risk there across the western portion, or kind of the western and central portion of the enhanced risk area there. Southeast Minnesota, places like Minneapolis, Rochester, toward La Crosse, Eau Claire, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and then a damaging wind threat as well, perhaps significant damaging wind and large hail. I think damaging wind is going to be the main threat with this system given the overall messy storm mode. But tornadoes will be a threat. Embedded circulations will be a threat as well. And any more discrete storm will be able to produce large hail, especially in the first hour or two of the convective life cycle. So with that, that'll be it. Thanks for watching. We will see you in the next video.